Hi, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to Conversations with MM or Marivir Montebon. That's me. And this is our third episode for this at this time. And we would like to thank you for your support and the enthusiasm of joining. And since we started with immigration lawyer, attorney Lizel Cobrador, to journalist Phil in Beijing, Christina DC Pastor. And now we have another guest. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your thoughts. It's very inspiring at this point in time. And Conversations with MM is brought to you by Awesome Online Magazine, which celebrates its 10th year of local journalism here in New York and in the East Coast of the US. So thank you so much. And at this point, I am honored to introduce our guest for this evening. He is from the Philippines. Guapo. Guapong guapo, no nonsense, very brave and courageous, and always palaban. He is the researcher, Philippine researcher for the Human Rights Watch, which is an international organization that advocates human rights all over the world. And he's a former reporter in the Philippines for the New York Times. He has written extensively about human rights and political situation in the Philippines, and he is also from Mindanao. So let's welcome the wonderful, guapo, and no nonsense, Carlos Conde. Hey, Kaloy. Good morning, Jan, sa Philippines.
Hi, Marivir. Good evening, Jan, and good morning dito. Thank you so much for the generous introduction. Yeah, medyo kinilig naman ako ng konti.
Oh, we need to kilig na these days kasi mahirap ang kalagayan. So, hope everything's okay on your end as a researcher, as family man, dyan sa atin. How is it? Generally, okay ba?
Yeah, well, all things considered, okay naman. We're still, doing our usual business. I'm still doing my usual job. Of course, with the recent election and the results that we're seeing, we're looking at this with a little bit more trepidation than usual because of who won and all the other issues that are relevant to this. So while on the other hand we are hopeful on one hand we are hopeful, on the other we are a bit wary about what the future brings. But again, as I said, everything's okay. The family's okay. Still able to do our jobs for now, at least. So yeah, everything's hunky-dory, as I say.
That's good to know. So this morning, Kaloy, napunta ako sa John F. Kennedy International Airport kasi the Vice President just flew in at 11 o'clock. So because she's she's attending the graduation of her youngest daughter, Jillian, sa NYU. So let me show this to you. So, and then we can perhaps start our conversation here.
Sure.
So she arrived at 11:01, landed at 11:01, and there's our colleague, Don Tagala, and some people who welcomed her, actually supporters of her campaign. And so this is the Vice President.
Oh, wow.
She came out, bringing her own luggage. And everybody was, this is a rose actually, na nakuha ko when I took the photo. It's like an ordinary person. You are familiar with this spot?
Really?
Hindi mo may nalakot ko yan. Wala naman akong pera. Kasi ganyan yung matakot dito, di ba? Dudung-duling at bigay.
Manay! Manay!
She's getting her Uber, helping load her luggage. And this was at JFK today. That's a well wisher. There you go.
That's
That's the
remarkable.
vice president.
Yeah,
It's unbelievable, right?
that's remarkable. It's. I mean, we have to keep in mind this is the second highest official of the land, the vice president of the Republic of the Philippines. But getting out
Correct.
of GFK, like a typical New Yorker or a typical visitor, getting an Uber, not even any,
Wala
not
man lang
even
siyang
a
sundo.
bodyguards. Walang
Uh-huh.
sundo.
Wala man
Oh
lang
my
siyang
God,
sundo. So
that's uh,
that's for me that's remarkable, that's humble, also scary. I was scared for her because
yeah. Well,
she was doing what everybody else would do, push her luggage out, wait for Uber, which we all do. So that's for me it's
yeah, I mean,
admirable.
the first thing that came to mind when I watched that, Maribel, and thank you for taking the video and the photos. It's really awesome for its authenticity and simple. No,
Uh-huh.
pero what really struck me when I saw that was that this is so
Mm.
different from all the others that we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
But also shows you that sort of baka this is the fundamental problem in the elections in the Philippines that we just saw, which is that
Mm-hmm.
people expect their government officials to really come in like in a grand way,
Royalty.
parang royalty, and she's just so different.
Mm-hmm.
But it shows to you what could have been, if she just managed to win this election,
Mm-hmm.
what the promise of a frugal, a simple Robredo presidency, all of that of course is gone now. But
Mm-hmm.
and this is something that a lot of us in the Philippines medyo nakapanghihinayang because this could have been what could have been, what
Right.
could be.
But in your opinion, ano na ba? Is it hinog na ba to concede that she is not going to be the next president? Ano na ba yan? That is given already?
Well, I don't want to go into all the fraud claims because based on the
Mm-hmm.
reporting so far that we've seen in the Philippines, there doesn't seem to be, any sort of massive fraud reported and the evidence to back that up. Unlike in 26, for instance, in Hilo Garcia and all of that. No,
Mm-hmm.
we
Yeah.
haven't seen anything like that. What has come out so far is the fact that one, the disinformation campaign by the Marcos camp, coupled
Mm-hmm.
with a robust use of political dynasties in the regions and the provinces, made possible the victory of Bongbong Marcos. And we may quibble about the quality of the votes of the people who voted for Bongbong, but the fact of the matter, I think, for now, is that people chose him. And
Mm-hmm.
to me, much as I want to go back and really dissect this and really try to prove the claim that this has been fraudulent.
Mm-hmm.
I think the better thing to do would be to, as Vice President Robredo herself has said, would be to look ahead, look forward, and see what can be done. Hit the ground running, as it were, post May 9.
So are you like saying that it's pointless to ask for a recount at this point?
No, I think the process should still go through. I mean, Comelec needs the commission election needs to answer a lot of questions. I'm not saying
Right,
that we
right.
should just sweep this under the rug.
Mm-hmm.
But the history of election protests in this country, and Bongbong herself knows that, is
Mm.
because he lost in 2016,
Oh
and he
yeah.
contested that rather thoroughly. The history of election protests in this country is that it's not just a few of them ever managed
Prospered.
to
Oh.
prosper. So I think a Bongbong presidency right now is a foregone conclusion. Now, that doesn't mean that the COMELEC should stop investigating. That doesn't mean that the claims of fraud and Dayaan and all of that should not be investigated. I think this, if only because in the next election the COMELEC needs to clean up its act.
Right. So, okay, given that, what do you see is forthcoming in this Marcos presidency,
Well,
Marcos
that's
Jr. presidency?
there's
What
a
is
lot to
happening?
unpack there, Marivir.
Yeah.
Because and international media, the national media, we've all said our piece about what this incoming Marcos Jr. presidency or regime would become or is capable of, and there are a lot of issues, several issues. One, of course, is human rights. That's the fundamental
Mhm.
issues that's facing Ferdinand Marcos Jr. And that's because one, his pedigree is actually quite closely linked with human rights violation. The regime
Mhm.
of his father, of which Marcos Jr. was a part of, is accused of tens of thousands of human rights violations. So, and those human rights violations have not been accounted for. Victims have not gotten justice. So, this is going to be kind of the albatross on the neck of Ferdinand Marcos Jr. as he
Mhm.
rules the country for the next 6 years. And I think human rights groups in the Philippines and activist groups, progressive groups, or those groups who believe that who believe in democratic processes and the institutions of democracy in the Philippines are not going to relent in their criticism of Ferdinand Marcos. So that's one thing. So
Yeah.
there's a huge now, I think, huge baggage as far as human rights is concerned. But on the other hand, some are even contending that perhaps Marcos might be able to do some things that would improve the human rights situation in the Philippines. Perhaps he will not pursue the drug war, the very, very brutal drug war that's been happening in the past 6 years that has killed thousands of people.
Mhm.
Perhaps he will not continue doing that. Perhaps, but
Oh.
again, he has said time and again. I think he has said that he's going to pursue the policies of incumbent President Duterte, but also at the same time promised to protect President Duterte from the ICC and all of that. So that's one issue, the human rights. Second is corruption.
Right.
Uh, that's the other thing. That's the albatross in the neck of President Bongbong Marcos. And this is not fake news. This is not some just allegation of people from the Lenny camp or critics of the president. This is a well documented fact that corruption in the Marcos regime and even up to this day is rampant. And so that is something that I mean, it probably is I would say confounding to a lot of people. Why should we expect Bongbong to
Yeah.
make corruption or to improve the corruption situation in the Philippines? The thing is, that's a very naive view. My view is that he's running for president mainly so that he can protect the wealth, the ill-gotten wealth of his family, and
So
make sure
most
that.
likely you believe that the PCGG is going to be abolished
Well, that's
or
uh, that's very too early to say. And
mhm.
for one thing, I don't think it's as simple as that.
Mm.
Um, and also, I don't think the one thing that this campaign actually, Mariver, has showed is that
Mhm.
uh, Bongbong Marcos has showed that there are subtle ways of circumventing democracy and accountability in the Philippines.
For
And
example, how?
he, like the disinformation, for instance, the revisionism.
Mhm.
I don't think he's going to abolish the PCGG because that's just too blatant. That's going to
Yes.
call attention to himself. What he will
Mhm.
probably do is appoint people who are going to make this PCGG, less of an effective government agency than it is,
Mhm.
unable to do its job properly. Probably remove some of the teeth, whatever teeth left in the PCGG. In the same way that he's probably going to appoint commissioners of the Commission of Human Rights, because he's the one who's going to appoint that soon after he becomes
Right.
president. The next en banc of the Commission on Human Rights. He's probably going to appoint people who are apologists for him. So, um,
Which
you
is
know,
very
but
likely and practical for a new person in position.
yeah, it's again. I don't think he's going to use a sledgehammer to do all of this. It's going to be
So
a surgical operation, as it were.
so where is the hope for the Philippines to prosper, to get out of the poverty situation and the dismal human rights situation? Where will
Well,
people go these days?
well,
What are
look,
what are they supposed to do?
I'm not a psychologist or a sociologist or anthropologist, so I can only say from a normal interaction with people,
Hmm.
and also based on my background as a journalist as well. I mean, there's always hope, except that a lot of Filipinos are still so distracted by everyday
Hmm.
living.
Right.
We can people, and let me explain that a little bit by
Hmm.
talking about the interplay of disinformation and the situation on the ground. Okay,
Yes,
now
go
people
ahead.
are saying disinformation is the main I would say factor why Bongbong Marcos wins.
Right.
Some may agree with that, and there's a huge evidence to suggest that the massive disinformation campaign by the Marcos camp did sway voters, did
Hmm.
I wouldn't say brainwash, but it affected how voters view Marcos, and they just bought everything, the lies and everything. But this information can only go so far. It can only effective if you are a people who is vulnerable to be manipulated to begin with, and that's what we are. That's what
Yeah.
Filipinos are. We've always been vulnerable for manipulation, information wise. People, you say, oh, bakit si Marcos? A lot of this has to do with our patriarchal and some would even say cacique culture from before.
Hmm.
We still have some feudal
Feudal.
tendencies around us. We look to strong leaders as the one that can save us from ourselves, from our poverty.
Yeah.
And Marcos played on that one. So, and that was facilitated by disinformation. You have a people that's just willing to believe anything just so they can survive on a daily basis. Okay, who are looking for answers for their own troubles. And then Marcos realized that through Facebook, social media, and hammered on that point. And then you have the traditional politicians, the ones in the local dynasties in the provinces and the regions, who, by the way, are now really have come back with a vengeance. The political dynasties, and they're the ones that facilitated all of this. They're the ones that provided warm bodies, the Arroyos, the Romualdeses, the
Hmm.
Dutertes of the world. They're the ones that provided the warm bodies that have already been, conditioned by disinformation to believe the Marcos line. So that was inevitable that Marcos will win with that kind of with the setup that we've seen. So, uh, is there hope coming from all of this? Not immediately, I think. I think we just have to go through this pain.
Hmm.
It pains me to say that because back in 1986, that's the same kind of
We always go through
uh,
the same pain,
mentality that we have.
apparently not learning.
It's not gonna be easy. We're going to go through the birth pains of a democracy, and more than 30 years later, that's still the same narrative that we are experiencing. So uh, I don't know, because I really can't say if there's reason to hope. I mean,
Hmm.
after this, I mean,
Hmm.
immediate hope. But what else can we do? What else can the public do except to just you know see through this, make sure that you do your duty as a citizen, and then try to participate in the democratic process, in the
Do
democratic
you think,
project that we have.
Kaloy, if ever like people became assertive of their own rights these days, they realize that they need to speak up. Do you think Marcos Jr. would listen and straighten up the government, make it transparent, make it beneficial to the people instead of just in their pockets? Do you think that's feasible as well, or do you
I
think it will
I think
be
that's
more repressive?
I think it's a very naive view as well. Because if there's one thing that we know about his family is that they never listen to what the people thinks. They never listen, except if it benefits them, just as in the case of the disinformation in this election. No, they're not known for taking
Listening.
stock of what the public pulse is, the
Mm-hmm.
real pulse of the public. So again, you have to keep in mind the motivations why the Marcoses, Imelda, Amy, and all the others wanted to reassert themselves from the very moment they set foot again in the Philippines in 1991. Their objective has always been to get back on power. Imelda tried to run for president but lost. Their cronies tried to run for president, lost. Marcos Jr. Ran for vice president in the hopes of becoming president now, but lost. So there's always this consistent effort on their part to to move the family back in the firmament, the political firmament of this country, and it's clear their motivations is not out of a grand ideological or politically lofty idea about how this country should run. I mean, Marcos, in fact, I mean, there's just nothing of that. He just keeps parroting this unity, and refuses to engage in debate, and so
And
people
no
have no
agenda.
idea. Yeah, people have no idea what he's going to do. Even to this day, sabi nga nila, buti pa si Lenny may idea na kung anong gagawin niya. I think natalo siya. So, which actually brings me to back to your question. Now that when people are suddenly becoming more assertive of their rights, and now I'm going to speak out, and we hope that really is the pink movement that Lenny helped to initiate and then allow to flourish. We really hope that this could usher in a new era of grassroots politics in the Philippines, in the same way perhaps that AOC did in the United States. Well, let's hope. But I also believe that given the forces, the resources at Marcos's disposal, he's going to do everything he can to try to frustrate that, and that's the scary part in all of this.
Right. That would mean repression, like physically and, virtually in the digital highway. So, my question is like, if you compare what had happened, like there was a political seizure of power at the time of EDSA 36 years ago, and Cory Aquino was there. But apparently, to my mind, as I remember it, masyadong magulo yung organized movement. Nawala. It became actually disintegrated. It lost its voice. And now, 36 years later, here's this woman, a widow, who also like seized the energy of people to become organizations of self-help, self-reliant, event activities, efforts. And so, do you think this is a glimmer of hope? And is this is what should have been done 36 years ago?
Well,
It will
certainly,
still be bloodbath anyway.
yeah, certainly, VP Robredo is a glimmer of hope. I mean, he's more than that. She's more than that. She has inspired a lot of Filipinos, millions of us, to do something that we've never did before. I mean, not even during 1986 people power. I mean, keep this in mind, okay? In 1986, people, millions of us, or hundreds of thousands of Filipinos, drove out into the streets in anger
Right.
against Marcos, right? So that was it. This time, in this election, hundreds of thousands of people joined Lenny's rally, unprecedented, not out of anger, not even out of spite, but out of hope.
Yeah.
And that is
Iba
something that,
sentiment.
that is something I think that scares a lot of the traditional politicians in this country. So, okay, now going back to 1986, I mean, you can trace a direct line from 1986 up to where we are now. I mean, 1986 and since then, we missed a lot of opportunities to really fix democracy in our country. We missed a lot of opportunities to not just to educate Filipinos about our history, about what could happen with our future. It's missed chances, for instance, to well, let's just focus on the education, because that's something that the disinformation machinery of Marcos really took advantage of.
Yes, yes.
Practically, very insignificant amount of education happened after 1986 about the Marcos years. I mean, you look at the textbooks,
Right.
hardly hardly any textbook is discussing the martial law abuses, and even our own kids are not being taught the history of the Marcos years in any significant way. I mean, they just asked to recite to memorize dates and names and such that, but there's not a lot of context. We didn't have
Yes.
a truth commission back then to try to take stock and to account for all the human rights abuses that happened. Unlike in South Africa, for instance, after the apartheid, there was a truth commission. We didn't have
Mhm.
that. Now, while after 1986, we did establish the Commission on Human Rights, which is the first in Asia, and made us think actually that the Philippines is really growing as a democracy. The problem is that that commission was so under resourced, was so severely under attack that it it
Yeah.
calcified over time. It only got reactivated after De Lima came along in 2010. So,
Mhm.
oh no, in 2006. So it's uh, we've always had a problem dealing with our Marcos past. And so we were so forgiving, we were so forgetful about what had happened before. And fundamentally, I think, because the 1986 uprising was not a revolution in the real sense. I mean, let's not
No.
kid ourselves.
Mhm.
It didn't change the structure of government. There were just
Correct.
some changes. There were some change in particular personalities, but really it didn't change much about our government at the time. So no fundamental changes in ways in how we run our government, and so you expect that to continue. And the fact that it allowed even for there was no accountability. There was no accounting of what the Marcoses had happened. Now, there was a PCGG. God bless Ruben Carranza for doing all of these things.
Yeah.
But evidently, it's not much. Evidently, we're still grappling with that. And when you have a dysfunctional political culture in the Philippines down to the local level, that's very easy to be compromised. This is all
And to be
good
bribed.
for the likes. Yeah, this is all good for the likes of Marcos, and now we see the price of that.
Yes, it's painful. But also looking back, if you have Corazon Aquino, who is also an oligarch, you couldn't really expect much as well. There was a lot of compromises to that, like her land reform program, the relationship with the cousin Danding Cojuangco, and all that. So
Yeah.
that added to everything, which
Well,
is really again
to
against
be
the
fair to
people's
Cory
culture.
Marivir,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
I think we were student activists during this time.
Yes, yes,
To
very
be
young.
fair to Cory, she did kind of express the hope among many of us that she was going to rise above her class,
Hmm.
and to some degree she did that. It
She tried
wasn't
to.
it wasn't as if she was handed something that's so easy to manage. She was handed
Mhm.
something that was so broken and damaged, and 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 let us also keep in mind that during her term, I mean, she was like under siege literally several times.
Mhm.
She was a lot of coup attempts against her. She was
Oh
a
yeah,
very
that was
insecure
also
president.
very hard.
So it's really not surprising that not a lot was done, and
Mhm.
worse even, she was under such tremendous pressure by the military that she even launched the all-out war policy against the communist movement that actually contributed to more human rights violations. So,
For-
but I want to give him to give her the benefit of the doubt by saying that it wasn't an easy task and that she had a lot of problem in her hands at the
Mhm.
time, and that she was under siege. So that's why we're here. So it wasn't something. Not all of us at the time, not all Filipinos at the time, were participating in trying to fix the country, because a lot of the forces at the time were trying to tear it asunder even more, and
Right, right.
that's why we see what we see now.
Wow, it's painful. Talking about this is like it's not even cathartic. We just have to deal with reality. Masakit siya. And like
Yeah.
you and I, we were in college at that time, and now we're in our mid 50s, and this much has happened. And in a different era, na there's a digital technology hovering on us, and which also is very challenging for our careers as communications people. So
Yeah.
mahirap.
So the
So
advances in technology have overtaken us, and with really catastrophic results.
that's the reason why I'm doing these conversations with MM, and very random, because I just want to, like, we have to speak. I mean, considering the magnitude of disinformation, you need to put content that is really something people would think about
Yeah,
substantially, right? So we're not like trying to be all knowing, but we will speak based on our experience and based on
yeah.
facts. That's just the point of this conversation, Kaloy. But before we wrap up, let me ask you one more question. If you were to explain this to your children, who are the hope of our future and our who are for the reason for our existence, to make things better for them, second generation, next generation, how do you make them compassionate and aware of our own miseries that have become, I believe, worse than it was before? How do you explain
Well,
this to your children?
well, that's a good thing about the pink movement that Lenny has started.
Mm-hmm.
I brought my children to at least three rallies. I mean, it's
Uh-huh.
not so much that I want them to be counted as one of the tens of thousands who attended, but I always thought that this was an opportunity for them to learn not just about Lenny, but the history behind this and why we're all doing this. So my wife and I made a conscious decision to bring this, and also over dinner, over in our home,
Mm-hmm.
we we talk about this. We talk about who Lenny is, but also more importantly, we talk about the past. We talk about what
Mm-hmm.
happened during martial law. We talk about all the bad things that happened before. Because in my view, there's just no way you can talk about the future and the hope we want to bring to our children without talking about all the horrible things that happened in the past. This is not just to. This is not even an attempt to try to muddy even more the name of the Marcoses. We're just talking
Mm-hmm.
about facts. We're just
Yeah.
talking about the truths that have already transpired, and how these truths, how these facts shaped our history that brought us exactly to where we are now. There's
Mm-hmm.
just no way we can do that. You cannot skip, history. You cannot cherry pick the stuff that happened before, so that your children may able to digest it, may able to appreciate it. They like a medicine. They
Mm-hmm.
just have to take this straight. They just have to swallow this hard, and
Mm-hmm.
and that's what we're striving to do. I'm not saying that's going to be the perfect kind of way to deal with all the disinformation, but really, disinformation can only be resisted by the use of facts, by the use of truths. You have to you have to make a conscious effort to do that, because if you just tell them, oh, you can watch Facebook, scroll your Instagram, or watch Twitter or TikTok, that's not gonna cut it. We have to intervene.
Yes.
We have to take this, and own this as our responsibility as parents, as adults.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you know and this is a sad story among many of us now. We are allowing technology to be the nannies of our children, and God knows what's happening in this online, on social media, right? I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
not just even repulsive content. It's more about the context. It's more about the history. There's none
Right.
of that. So parents really should make an effort, a conscious effort,
We
to
owe it to them.
take the extra step to
Mm-hmm.
explain to your children the past, because that's the only way we can move forward, and that's the only way we can have any semblance of hope.
I agree. I agree, and I salute you on that. Now, last question. Did you think about this, and did you also like feel guilty, like perhaps you didn't do much as you should have done, considering what is going on right now? Like the Marxists are back.
Well, I don't know, not personally. I mean, since the
Uh,
1980s revolution, I've felt that as my job as a journalist, and then now as a human rights advocate. I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn or the horn of a human rights advocate, but compared to the ordinary citizen, I think we did a fair amount of additional stuff, more than an ordinary Filipino would do, right?
mhm.
Uh, that's just how it is. That's because that's our calling. That's our job.
Yeah.
Um, But as a society, as a people, oh, definitely, I don't think we did enough. I think our
Kulang
tendency
pa.
to look the other way, or I wouldn't even accuse the public or the Filipinos in general of
Mm.
trying to of ignoring history, or papering over what had happened. I think they were just, I mean, all the poverty, all the things, the ugly things that are happening, and now the pandemic and all of that, we're just too
Mhm.
distracted.
Right.
We just don't have enough time to, to go up for air and take stock of what's happening. We're just too distracted, and now in disinformation pa, dinagdag pa. So hindi talaga siya, hindi siya conducive for
It's too overwhelming.
yeah, it is overwhelming, and it's not something that a lot of us had the luxury to do, to try to look at this from, na kumbaga, look back and a wider perspective, so that's just how it
So
is.
how do you relax? I think you relax by cooking.
Well, I relax by cooking. I relax by tending to my garden, and also venting on Facebook and social media. But
Uh-huh.
mostly, I get inspiration. I get I don't know. I wouldn't even say relaxation by from the solidarity that a lot of us, a lot of Filipinos, from the human rights community, civil society, friends like you are expressing toward
Hmm.
the work that we do.
Amazing.
It's something that gives me a lot of strength, affirms the validity of what we're doing. I mean, obviously, it's not just me. A lot of us in the human rights community, in the media community, feel the same way. But really, this incoming regime uh, gives us little reason to relax. We need to be vigilant. We need to be
Yeah.
up on our feet all the time. We need to counter the disinformation, and also, most importantly, I think we need to go down to the ground, to the grassroots, and see what's the matter there,
What's
what's going on there. You know.
right? So all the best. Keep doing what you're doing, and thank you so much for sharing your expertise and ideas and thoughts about our cultural situation in the Philippines. And keep safe there, and try to be happy. Thank you for your time, Kaloy.
Thank you, Marivir, and awesome, and thank you to our friends in New York and all around the world who are watching this. I mean,
Uh-huh.
the Philippines is still a worthy democratic project, and we should be in on it. And
Yes.
good luck to all of you.
Thank you, Kaloy. And see
Bye.
you again, hopefully on Facebook
Yeah,
again, and or here in New York.
yeah, sure.
Okay. Bye bye for now, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your time. And this has been Marivir Montepon for Conversations with MM. Till the next episode. Bye for now. Thanks, Kaloy.